There should be no confusion now. My biggest category of horror I love is psychological. But do you remember the last time Resident Evil did that? By now you've already seen, I obviously love Silent Hill. I'm a huge fan of it. But more importantly, I'm a big fan of psychological horror. That was my bag. If the game could get into your mind, I was there. I was playing it. There are different brands of horrors. You have your cheap jump scares, you have your guts and gore, and you have your killers chasing you around slasher flick style. But nothing hit harder than psychological horror. Now, bear in mind you had your games early on, like Eternal Darkness is a good example, where the game would continuously mess with you based on their mechanics and have you wondering if you're even in the beginning of the game or the end of the game. They would make you believe you're dead, that sort of thing. Getting into the head of the player, and take it from me as a 12-year-old GameCube player, my brain exploded trying to figure out if picking up my own head on the ground was an inventory item or not. Trust you and me. But while we had all the horror titans going back and forth and facing off with each other, you had Resident Evil versus Silent Hill versus Alone in the Dark versus Fatal Frame. You had all these games in the background trying new and different inventive things. But I want to focus on Resident Evil because it's very, very interesting to me as we go along through the years, as I watch this franchise kind of do what it's been doing. At present, you have the Resident Evil 4 remake, you have the Code Veronica remake coming up soon. Capcom's aware that you love these games and that you want to see them done in the same trademark way they remade Part 2 and 3. And I can appreciate that. But I started to recall when the last time I got scared of a Resident Evil game, and when that was. And I had to think hard for a second. And I think that the same time, and this is why I lean more towards Silent Hill than I do Resident Evil, at the same time, this game became scary because it fell in line with the psychological horror aspect of things, which I appreciate so much. It also came at a heavy cost. So today I'm going to talk to you about Resident Evil 7. Now, for those that don't know, it goes like this. We had just gotten off of the cusp of a slew of different games in the Resident Evil universe that revolved around action punches, suplexing zombies, drop-kicking people, and firing ion cannons into zombies' mouths. Then we had our Netflix movies as well, and our Hollywood movies, if you want to call them Resident Evil movies, that's fine too. We can do that if you like. But we had all these things come out, and then out of nowhere we get a trailer circling around a house in particular with a family inside of it. And from there, everyone's interest was piqued, and it became viral in that sense because people just kept talking about it. Resident Evil had never looked so good before. If this was a Resident Evil game, it had never looked so good before, number one. But number two, it didn't seem to have all the traditional things you were used to. There's no Umbrella Corporation, there's no men in suits, there's no Wesker flinging around or Chris punching boulders, there's no anything. There was just you and this family in this house. And they rode on this in the marketing campaigns as hard as they could, and even introduced VR mechanics to it as well, back when PlayStation VR was in its infancy. Now, bear in mind, I absolutely, when the game came out, I got this game as well. I was like, okay, you have my interest. What is going on here? The first thing I said was, Silent Hill ripoff. They finally ripped off the right things from their competitors, and had my laughs. But when I played it, it was something a little different. Far gone were the ideas that some giant biological beastie was chasing you, programmed by all the powers that be, and coming to get you and slam you through walls and throw cars at you. That was out the window. There were no Mr. X's, there were no Weskers or anything like that. At the most, you had meandering, walking around zombies that were covered in what looked like tentacles and intricate little vines and things like that. There was no more of the secret project that you've unleashed across the city. None of that. It was just you in this house, and you were just trying to save your girlfriend. Nothing more, nothing less. And that simplistic ass mechanic got me. Even from the start, before I even stepped foot into the house, just walking around on the outside, not knowing anything about anything, and feeling like the boyfriend as I'm trying to figure out what the next plausible step is, built that sense of dread and that sense of fear that I love about a game, that I love about a horror game. However, I'm also used to Resident Evil, so at some point I was like, there has to be a dual shotgun that I can combine with my arm and fire off at people at some point, and things like that. So I waited for it. But while I waited for it, I sat through this fun house of terror as I'm walking through and slowly getting access to this home. And once I do, they immediately show you the girlfriend. They immediately show you that she's in there, but something's wrong with her. And that something that's wrong with her turns her into the worst villain of the entire game. Not only that, damn near invincible. So, two things there. You had the scary aspect. You had the unknown walking into this house you have no idea about. Now, you had your theories, and of course you had your umbrella theories because it is a Resident Evil game, but that's all you had to go off of. And then you finally find your girlfriend only to come to realize that she's infected with something that turns her into some sort of crazy, hulking alternate personality. And that was when it first started creeping, and that was when the fear started creeping in, because I'm thinking, okay, your general objective, your main objective is now over. Like, it's done. And then you meet the family, and it becomes that more evident that you're not just going to walk out of here. And that was a good start. Right then and there, that was a beautiful start. It was already enough of different that I was thinking to myself, this is a game changer. Now, cue an entire game of puzzles, finding enemies, sneaking through, finding semi-better weapons, boss battles, and things like that. I came to a few conclusions, and it actually told me a lot about a horror genre as stated by any of the Resident Evil's Fatal Frames, anything like that. If you change the style of horror, you even change the style of horror, not the narrative, but the style of horror, you forego a lot of the plot itself. You forego a lot of the lore itself. And I think Resident Evil 7 took a major hit in the lore and spirit of Resident Evil department when they made this game. They made it scary, but here's the cost it came at. You were not in a position where you were trying to fight the man anymore, and that was how all the Resident Evils were. No matter what the situation was, you were trying to fight like the system, the powers that be. In this, you were not. So already it didn't feel like a traditional Resident Evil game. Now bear in mind, a lot of people should come into any game with a new set of eyes, and they should, kind of be open-minded, and I get that. So then it brings to the next question: was it worth it? Was it necessary? Was it needed? No, it wasn't. I love that game, Resident Evil 7. I'll preface this by saying I love Resident Evil. Even though I look at them as a competitor to Silent Hill, I love Resident Evil. I've played all of them, damn near. I think I'm missing like 2 under my belt. I don't think it was needed, and I don't think that kind of tonal change was necessary, because it was a strange break from what you're used to. And while some people will like that and things like that, you also have a franchise where people are building and uncovering a conspiracy even to this day about Umbrella. They're dissecting and pulling apart and looking into characters and things like that. So when you have a game like this, it kind of just turns into a carnival ride where you're kind of detouring off the main path to get on this ride and go, whoa, that was crazy. I was very scared. And then you get back on the ride where you're back to doing what you're doing with Resident Evil. And a lot of content creators do, like, they kind of just dig into the other Resident Evils. Now, that's not to say they gutted all the lore from Resident Evil 7 or Village. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is this was a severe distraction at the cost of being scary. It was by far the scariest Resident Evil game I've ever played in my life, but it came at the cost of immersion into the Resident Evil universe. It was a side quest at best, and that's all it could be. That being said, while I appreciate the game and everything like that, I don't think it was something that should have been lined up as one of the traditional Resident Evils. And it's considered Resident Evil 7. It's titled as Resident Evil 7. Village is Resident Evil 8, so I guess Resident Evil 9 will just be something else. I truly hope they don't go in this sort of tone shift forever. I hope that when they continue on these Resident Evils, they kind of don't go down this road, but based on how popular Village and 7 were, they probably will. That being said, you got a lot of work to do making sure that all of your lore and universe and everything else like that kind of meshes together well with this new, darker Blumhouse A24 universe you've created. You have to. Because if not, it's going to look like an artist's rendition of Resident Evil. You know, some, oh, this would look cool if we did it this way. But it would not look true to its standard form. And I don't know, you know, I haven't dug deep into what the fans believe on its changes and things like that. But I, for one, coming from a psychological standpoint, I fucking love this change. But I also remember as a kid going, oh shit, there's Wesker. Why is Wesker here now? What is he into? What kind of intrigue has he got going on? And the horror wasn't the horror that everybody is used to seeing now. The horror was, my head could be cut off. Or these birds just flew through a window. You guys know the scene I'm talking about in Resident Evil. But it's a weird shift, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it yet. I don't know if we need more of it or less of it. But they have to find a way to kind of seamlessly transition all of the universe into this new, darker, more demented world in order to make this work, in my opinion. And it's probably the only way it can work, if we're being fairly honest. Yeah, I was thumbing through the Resident Evil series, you know, looking for news and updates and things like that for all the horror games, really. And I just thought about it. I was just thinking to myself, when's the last time Resident Evil was actually scary? I'm so used to unlocking hidden characters and Hunk and Tofu and playing with a Magnum revolver that I didn't have to worry about all those particulars and things like that. But I don't know, without that stuff, you have to replace it with something else. And if you replace it with a whole bunch of creepiness, then you have to change the world around you as well. And that just goes for anything. If you don't, you make a standalone game. And if that was their goal, to make a standalone game, then awesome. You know, make your Ethan game where you play as a guy named Ethan who's faceless and you hear his voice from time to time. Make your game and then let it die, you know. But if you plan on connecting any of this together or making it a part of the sequel numbers, you're gonna have your work cut out for you. And this is coming from a guy who wants to see more psychological horror like this. I don't know. That's just my opinion anyway. Yeah, anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. So if you guys like what you see, just go ahead and like and subscribe. I will go through a ton of different horror game-based shits and things and stuffs. But I definitely like to impart my thoughts on the matters and like to hear people's comments. I'm actually pretty hooked on the comments most of all, because once everybody disagrees or agrees with me, they hit the comments, they know me. I'm responding to all of them because I have a problem and too much time. But yeah, I'd certainly appreciate it. We're having a lot of new faces pop in, and I'm just trying to get content out to you every other day, much like always. And also be sure to check out my Patreon. There you'll be able to find that you get certain perks that not many others get access to. I post hidden videos and things like that over on my Patreon, as well as giving you the ability to show up on my screen right here, as well as the ability to talk to me directly, and we can work out some things and ideas that you may have, maybe a video you want to see, that sort of thing. But I think that's it for me today. I want you guys to take care of yourselves, and if you need me for anything, you know where the hell to find me. I'm on the internet. Bye.